It's Twitter Tuesday, right here, right now on the LockedOn Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans. Welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. My name is Patricia Traina, and welcome to another edition of Twitter Tuesday, where your questions take center stage here on the Locked On Giants podcast. And we've got about a dozen or so questions, a variety of different topics, most of them about what we saw in the 2020 tie between the Giants and the Commanders. So we're going to go through them as we usually do. And I'm going to try my best to give you some answers because there's some questions out there that I'm not sure of what the answers are. But I'm going to do my best for you as always. Again, thank you for tuning in, making us your first listen of the day, or if watching on YouTube, your first watch of the day. And let's go ahead and kick things off with the questions. We have roughly a dozen or so here. So we're going to kick it off with a question from CCA Michael. I think this is Michael Nixon, who right away, a topic that I know I question. Why is the officials' miscues at the end of the game not more relevant today? 3 blown calls in 10 seconds. Okay, Michael, a couple things. Number one, what do you want people to do? I mean, the league can admit that there were mistakes, but that doesn't mean that they're going to be able to go back and change the game. So, all you're doing really is highlighting the mistakes and closing the barn door after the horses run out. It's too late to fix the calls. Now, that said, Michael, I agree with you. I think there were calls that were missed by the officials. However, sometimes the officials, when they do the gradings, their senior people, when they grade the officials, they see things a little differently than you and I do. So what you and I might see as a missed hold or a missed offside or whatever, they might see as something different. And with regard to play clock, I know that's a hot topic. I've been told by a former official that the play clock that you see on the TV screen doesn't always sync up with the actual play clock in the stadium. So these are just a few things. I'm not trying to make excuses for the officials because I thought there were some holds and some penalties and stuff that were missed. But, at the end of the day, Michael, I mean, sometimes the Giants get some calls that they shouldn't and sometimes they don't. And that's just how it is when you have that human element. So, again, all the Giants can do is submit a bunch of clips to the league and say, hey, should these have been penalties or should these not have been penalties? And then the league will say yes or no. And that's the end of it, really. I mean, I guess, it affects the officials' grades, but it doesn't help the Giants go back and fix, or get a mulligan on something that they missed out on because of a bad call. So that's kind of where that's at. All right, up next, Nick writes in. He says, is it me or has the play calling and game management from Dable and Kafka been too reserved and flat? Seems like they are coaching not to lose instead of going for the win. Nick, I agree with you. What I think is at play here, and it's interesting because the topic did come up with Coach Dable during his Monday presser with the media. What I think is at play is the Giants have had so many injuries that have, wiped out basically made the receiving core a mash unit. They have also had multiple offensive line units because of injury. And I think what the Giants have had to do, if you will, is go back and simplify some stuff and kind of go back to square one with a lot of these guys. And that could be why you're seeing things flat, as you put it. I don't necessarily think it's a question of not trusting Daniel Jones. I suspect it's a question of, some of these backups. And let's face it, some of the guys that the Giants have starting at receiver would not be starting on other NFL teams. I think that has something to do with it. So, they're playing not to lose, maybe because, they are in the playoff hunt and you don't want to lose. So maybe you tend to be a little bit more conservative. It's not what we were used to in the beginning part of the season when Dable was a little bit more risky with some of the calls that he signed off on. But I think that's what's at the heart of the matter. So just my guess. James Kolpas asks, if the D line can put pressure on Jalen Hurts, we can keep it close. Then you never know. Where does the Eagles O line stack up against the rest of the league? All right, James, I went to two sites to look this up. The first one is obviously Pro Football Focus. So I looked up their pass blocking efficiency rating. They are ranked third in the league with the best pass blocking efficiency rating of 89.6, which means that they're basically keeping their quarterback clean 89.6% of the pass blocking opportunities. I also went over to Football Outsiders, which is really good. They have some really good stats. They get a little more detailed if you're looking for offensive line stats and defensive line stats. Philly is ranked 7th against the run, 21st against the pass. But that 21st ranking against the pass, that's a conglomeration of different things, different factors, which I believe, let me just take a look. I think some of the factors that include sacks, adjusted sack rate, there might be like open field yards and stuff like that. So there are different rankings or different factors that go into that ranking. So that's how the Eagles line stacks up. The Eagles line, according to Football Outsiders, let me see. I think they've given up. I'm going to look it up real quick. I just got to find it in this chart here. The Eagles have given up 30 sacks, and they have an adjusted sack rate of 8%, which puts them kind of in the middle of the pack, actually towards the bottom of the pack. So, yeah, I think with any offensive line, to be honest with you, James, you get pressure on the quarterback. You give yourself a chance to maybe, have some success against that quarterback. But what you got to be careful with Jalen Hurts is that he can hurt you with his legs. So you can't constantly blitz, and not guard the edges, so to speak. So it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. You got to pick your spots if you're the Giants. And I think if you can collapse the pocket and maybe force him out, and then hold the contain on the edges, maybe you have a shot at keeping him under wraps. So thanks for the question. All right, let's see. We've got a question from Giant fans and at NY Giants News 26. Why was Zion freaking Gilbert? Okay, guys, come on. We don't have to get cussy here. Why was Zion Gilbert, who went undrafted and cut on cutdown day, starting over a third-round pick, Cordell Flott? Giants fan, Cordell Flott had an injury. He was on the injury report. I believe he had a shoulder ailment. So I'm sorry, I'm mixing my guys up. He had a concussion. He was coming off the concussion protocol. So even though Flott was cleared to play, that he made it through the concussion protocol, if I remember correctly, he didn't do so until late in the week. So at that point, they might have decided to, hold him back a little bit rather than throw him out there after he's just coming off the concussion protocol. So that's why I suspect they put Gilbert in there. And, no need to call the guy freaking Gilbert. Come on. He's part of the team, and he didn't do that badly, actually. So, but I guess your point being is why is an undrafted free agent starting over a third-round pick? Again, I think it has to do with the injury factor that I mentioned before. All right, folks, we've got plenty more here on today's Twitter Tuesday edition of the LockedOn Giants podcast. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back. This episode of the LockedOn Giants podcast is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. If you're a small business owner looking for the right people to help your small business fire on all cylinders, you need to check out LinkedIn Jobs. Post a free job listing in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs to reach the world's largest professional network of over 810 million people. Then add your job and the purple hiring hashtag framed to your LinkedIn profile to let everybody know that you're hiring. Over 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn Jobs every week and are just waiting to find opportunities with employers like your business. With LinkedIn Jobs, simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so that you can quickly prioritize whom you'd like to interview and whom you'd like to hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. Post your job for free today at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I am Patricia Traina. We got a Twitter Tuesday going on. We are answering some of your questions. And just programming note for those who missed the news, the Giants, Washington, week 16, I think it is. I think it's week 16 game. The rematch has been flexed to Sunday Night Football. So if you missed that note, yeah, that's a Sunday night game. Yay, right? You know how I feel about those night games, but hey, at least it's a road game. But anyway, coming up this week on the Locked On Giants podcast, tomorrow I'm going to probably do an analytical type of show for you. I might see if I can get that salary cap program in, but if not, I have another topic in mind that I'm going to run by you. One that actually you guys can participate in. Should be a lot of fun. So we'll try that. Thursday is crossover Thursday. The Eagle co-hosts. It's either going to be Gino Camilleri. I think that's who's going to be on the podcast with me, or it's going to be Louis DiBiase. Those two guys host the Locked On Eagles podcast. And then Friday, Locked On Giants Live. Traina, Tana, and the dog. I wonder how Chris would rate me with that intro, right? I wonder if I would get a 10. I'll have to have him check out the podcast and see how that would rate. But yeah, we're going to do, excuse me, Locked On Giants Live on Friday, it looks like. If that changes, I'll post a note in YouTube, in the community boards, and you'll see. And stop by if you're not doing anything. We have a blast on those one. You know, we not only talk football, we talk pizza, we've been talking about marriage, we've been talking about all kinds of things because we're human. We talk about more stuff than football. So, but still, come on by. It's like a nice little party. So we have a great time. All right, let's get back to your questions here on this Twitter Tuesday edition of the Locked On Giants podcast. Foreshadow says offense is the lack of passing game more on Jones reading, play calling, no trust in receiver. Gates not a guard. Defense, can Tamon Fox play middle linebacker, at least on first and second down? Seem to think less and trust instincts. And okay, that got a couple questions there. So let me take the offense first. I think the offensive issue is a combination of things. I said it before in the previous segment that they've got a mash unit of receivers, and they've got guys who I think on any other team would either be like fourth, fifth, or maybe even practice squad receivers instead of first, number 1, 2, and 3 receivers as they are now. So I think that has something to do with it. I do think to a degree, Daniel Jones, as good as he's been, I think there have been some misplays. So I think it's a combination of things. And I think also part of it is play calling. I mentioned it before. The play calling has been kind of conservative because of this mash unit that they've had at receiver and also on offensive line. So get Daniel Jones some legitimate receivers and keep them healthy. That's the important thing. And let's see what he can do. Maybe he can wow people. I mean, if he gets that opportunity, we'll have to see. All right. You also asked about Tamon Fox being an inside linebacker. I'll be honest with you. I haven't really thought about that. I haven't really considered that. But I think what I'll do, for those who don't know, I also participate in a publication called Inside Football. Inside Football, we break down every week each player's performance. And also we have like the key theme of the game, like what was the key factor. So this week we talked about the Battle of the Pit, and then we talked about a little bit of the passing game. So I don't usually do the linebackers for Inside Football, but I can certainly ask the guy who does the linebackers if he thinks that Tamon Fox would make for a good inside linebacker. Excuse me. Uh, that's interesting. I did an interview actually with Tamon Fox. I have to write it up, but I did an interview with him a few weeks ago. I'm going to eventually put it up on Giants Country, but I don't know. I'd have to ask our the guy who does our inside linebackers what he thinks. So you know what? Circle back with me if you wouldn't mind, like in a week or so, and I will see if can get an answer from the guy who does the inside linebackers. Because like I said, I don't do that position group for inside football. I more or less do some of the other position groups. So and also some of the strategy stuff. So I'll check into that for you, though, if you remind me. So sorry I don't have an answer for you right now, but do remind me, and I'll try and get you an answer. Okay, Nick Punturi, what seems to be the biggest hindrance to the success of the run game? All right, Nick, I am glad you asked that question. I looked up on Football Outsiders to confirm my theory, what I'm seeing on film. And I have been saying that the Giants are not winning their battles at the second level, which is basically that area just beyond the line of scrimmage. So, according to Football Outsiders, the Giants are averaging 1.12 yards at the second level. That is 20th in the NFL. If you're going to have a good run game, your offensive linemen need to get into that second level and pick off linebackers and other guys who are coming in trying to fill holes. Giants haven't done that good of a job with that. So that's, I think, probably the biggest problem right now with the run game. Now, the other thing you can make an argument for is Saquon Barkley, since hurting his shoulder. To me, now I could be totally wrong here. I know, going back to what I was saying about inside football, the guy who does the running backs kind of agrees with me on this. Barkley looks like he's kind of favoring or protecting that shoulder that he injured. So I don't know if he's doing it on purpose or if I'm just seeing things or whatnot, but ever since that injury, Barkley, a little bite has come out of Barkley's game. So I think it's a combination of things, but the biggest factor in my mind is the lack of success at the second level. So again, you can check out these stats on Football Outsiders if you want to, see. They do a really good job breaking down the nitty gritty of offensive line stats and defensive line stats. All right, next question. Excuse me. This comes from Tony Maff. The Giants offense has been very vanilla. Understand the receivers are lacking, but wondering if this is also on Daniel Jones not pulling the trigger, or could they be holding stuff back for the remaining division games? They're not holding anything back for the remaining division games. I really don't think that is the case. I think, like I said, it's a combination of things. It's a combination of the receivers. I think it's a combination of the pass protection, which hasn't been ultra sharp. I think it's a combination of the fact that you have different offensive line combinations. And to a degree, you also have Daniel Jones at times holding onto the ball too long. So it's any number of things. I don't think it's one specific reason, but I don't think the Giants are holding back. I mean, if they are, shame on them. I mean, you play to win. You don't hold stuff back because, I might need this next week against opponent X. No, if you need it now, bring it out. I mean, that's kind of the purpose of game planning, isn't it? So, anyway, thanks for that question. Elizabeth Contreras asks, does McKinney and Jackson have a chance to be back to play Washington in prime time? Elizabeth, too soon to tell. Let's get through this week first and see if either guy is able to practice. Now, the question was put to Brian Dable on Monday. I don't think McKinney's going to be ready this week. I don't think Jackson's going to be ready this week. However, I think what they're going to try and do is maybe see if Jackson can practice. If he can go limited on Wednesday and Thursday and Friday, then I would say he's got an outside chance. But if he doesn't practice, say like Wednesday and Thursday, and then comes back and is limited on Friday, I'd say, yeah, probably need to wait. But either way, I think in both cases, you've got to wait too far out to predict what's going to happen in 2 weeks, let alone what's going to happen this weekend. It's only Monday night as I record this. The guy's got another round of therapy and rehab on Tuesday and also on Wednesday morning. So it's just too soon to make that call right now, Elizabeth. But thank you for your question nonetheless. All right, folks, we got a few more questions coming up. We're going to get to them right after this final break. This episode of the LockedOn Giants podcast is brought to you by Audible. Audible is releasing a slate of new football podcasts that we're sure that you're going to love. That's why you'll be able to find Block Forever, available as a bonus episode on the LockedOn NFL podcast right now. Block Forever is a brand new podcast from former NFL All-Pro Ryan Khalil, who takes the conversation about football to the next level. Khalil sits down with star players, coaches, and former pros across the league to get real about what happens on the field and behind the scenes. New episodes of Block Forever will be recorded and released every week ahead of Thursday Night Football. So head on over to the Locked On NFL podcast for a sneak peek of Block Forever, or catch the full series available anywhere you get your podcasts. Audible, get in the game. Hey, Giant fans, thanks so much for making the Locked On Giants podcast your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On Sports Today. From the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today, available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Welcome back, Giant fans, to the Locked On Giants podcast. We've got a Twitter Tuesday. I am doing my best to answer your questions. They are great questions. I like the ones that make me have to go and look stuff up, do a little research, or make me have to sit and think. So you guys come through all the time, and I do appreciate it. For those of you who might have sent me in questions and they didn't quite make this podcast, that's because I got them maybe after I taped. So if you sent in a question, it didn't get answered, check out Giant Country Mailbag. That's why I do mailbags twice a week, to catch up with whatever I missed or whatever came in after I tape on Twitter Tuesdays. So check out Giants Country as well as, every day. We've got articles and all kinds of stuff over on Giants Country. All right, let's get back to these last few questions. David Langston asked, any chance Ben Bredesen is back this week? Again, David, too soon to tell. Now, here's the thing with Ben Bredesen. They're going to need a roster spot for him. So my guess here is if Joshua Ezeudu's neck is still a problem, then maybe the Giants do a swap. Better Bredesen for Ezeudu. If the Giants think they're going to have Ezeudu back at some point, they might have to wait to get Bredesen back. So too soon to tell on a Monday. I again, with injury stuff, I need to get to Wednesday. I need to see who practices and who doesn't. Then I can give you guys a better answer with regards to who might be back and when. But I would say at this point, as long as Ezeudu is still on the active roster, I don't think they're going to swap him out, or bring back Bredesen, I should say, unless Ezeudu is done for the year with that neck injury. So that's kind of how I see that playing out. ESPN bound, why was Rodarius Williams benched without warning, playing a large portion of snaps against Dallas and then benched against Washington for a practice squad cornerback? You know what? I don't know the answer to that. I wondered that myself. Dable was asked that question in his Monday presser, and he basically said, look, we have discussions every week about who we want to bring up and who we don't. The only thing I can think of, and again, the media is not allowed at the practices, so I can't say this for sure. The only thing I can think of is that Rodarius Williams didn't earn game reps in practice. according to the game book, he didn't even get on the field. He and Tyrod Taylor didn't even get on the field, and they were active for that game. So it was almost like, I don't want to say a punishment, but it makes you wonder if he did something during the week that the coaches didn't like, and they just said, you know what? We're not playing you, dude. We're going to play somebody who wants to play. That's the only logical explanation I can come up with, because Rodarius Williams played well against Dallas. I think he had 2 pass targets, and he came up with an interception and a pass breakup. So I, you know, if it wasn't that something that went down in practice last week, I don't know what the answer is. I really don't. But I have a feeling that's what it is, because Brian Dable has always been about guys have to earn practice reps and game reps. And that's the only thing I can think of. So we'll see what the next week brings. All right. Final question from Texas Wine Lover. There were many players on both teams wearing visors. Bellinger had a tinted one. I don't recall this many before. Was it colder weather or some other reason? Bellinger wore a visor, obviously, because of the eye injury. But I'll be honest with you, I didn't notice other guys wearing visors. Some guys wear them for, to block out the sun, because it's usually kind of bright now this time of year, especially early on in the game. So maybe that was part of it. Some guys wear visors to protect their eyes, from being poked. Some guys have visors because that come all the way down to their nose because, for protection from guys breathing on them. It could be any number of things, but, truth be told, I didn't even notice it. That was just one of those little details where, I wasn't really looking for that. So, but those are some of the reasons I think guys were wearing the visors. It's a protective thing, and if they were tinted, like I said, that could be like to help with the sun, to cut the sun glare out. Because I know, like, for the first hour or so after kickoff, even I have to, sometimes I'm tempted to put my sunglasses on, and I'm sitting upstairs and the glare is just so bad, especially with the glare of the sun and then the glare of the laptop. It's like, wow. So that's probably what it is. I would think it has to do with the sun glare. So, all right, Giant fans, that is all of our Twitter Tuesday questions. Thank you, as always, for the great feedback, the great questions. And make sure that you are tuning in to the Locked On Giants podcast the rest of the week. Tomorrow I'll have a topic for you. What that topic is, I've got to see which topic develops better. I know you guys have been waiting on a salary cap topic, probably something better for the off season. But I have something else that I could do, that I might do, that I think, like I said, you guys can get involved with if you want to. Thursday's a crossover show. Friday, Locked On Giants Live. So keep it here all week long on the Locked On Giants podcast. Thank you for tuning in, making us your first listen of the day, or if watching on YouTube, your first watch of the day. My name is Patricia Traina. Have a great day, everybody. We shall see you again tomorrow.